Did you realize that, as an industry, the amount of rework or repainting of vehicles due to avoidable surface contaminations costs shop owners millions of dollars every single year? Wait, that's probably a little light. I think it's more like tens of millions of dollars a year. Right up the old booth stacks. And yes, I did say avoidable contaminations. More specifically, dirt and fisheyes. Now the good news is, no matter what kind of facility you have, whether you paint 1 car a day or 10, it doesn't have to be that way, and I'll show you why. This week, I'm starting a new podcast series called Keeping It Clean, where I break down all the aspects of what really creates these repaints, what the main sources of contamination are, and what the real costs of rework are from all perspectives, and what effect a good preventative maintenance program has on reducing repaints and extending the life cycle of booth equipment, all captured in shorter, bite-sized episodes.
Welcome to the MindWrench Podcast with your host, Rick Sellover, where minor adjustments produce major improvements in mindset, personal growth, and success. This is the place to be every Monday, where we make small improvements and take positive actions in our business and personal lives that will make a major impact in our success, next level growth, and quality of life.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the MindWrench Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Sellover. Thanks so much for stopping in. If you're a returning listener and haven't done so already, please take a minute and click the follow or subscribe button, and then rate and review the show. When you rate and review the show, the algorithms for Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and all the other platforms will see that it's valuable and show it to more people that have never seen it before. And hopefully it can help them too. I would really appreciate your help sharing this word with your friends and family as well. And if you're a brand new listener, welcome. I hope you find something of value here that helps you in your personal or professional life as well. Please make sure to click the subscribe or follow button so you never miss another episode. Did you realize that, as an industry, the amount of rework or repainting of vehicles due to avoidable surface contaminations costs shop owners millions of dollars every single year? Wait, that's probably a little light. I think it's more like tens of millions of dollars a year. Right up the old booth stacks. And yes, I did say avoidable contaminations. More specifically, dirt and fisheyes. This incredible cost is not a misfortune only realized by startup shops with little to no spraying equipment, or smaller established shops with an old cross draft, but by many large, high-production facilities with multiple downdrafts, and even some of the most elite collision repair centers in the U.S. Now, the good news is, no matter what kind of facility you have, whether you paint 1 car a day or 10, it doesn't have to be that way, and I'll show you why. This week, I'm starting a new podcast series called Keeping It Clean, where I break down all the aspects of what really creates these repaints, what the main sources of contamination are, and what the real costs of rework are from all perspectives, the roles and responsibilities of the paint technician and business owner in this arena, and what effect a good preventative maintenance program has on reducing repaints and extending the life cycle of booth equipment, all captured in shorter, bite-sized episodes. This first episode, I'm focusing on where the contamination comes from to begin with, and I've categorized them into 3 root sources: the booth, the vehicle, and the painter. All dirt or fisheyes can be tied to originating from one of these 3 sources. Now, just for clarity, we are not talking about things like bullseyes or lifting or solvent popping or runs or sags or orange peel or any of that other stuff. Those are much different issues and not surface contaminations. And when doing my research for this deep dive into dirt, I had previously interviewed key people from the top 3 booth manufacturers, gathered info from the distributors that install, service, and provide preventative maintenance programs for those booths, as well as surveying several industry tech reps, some that I know, some that have worked for me, and I've also spoke with several paint manufacturers reps, and lastly, I have drawn on my own 40-plus year career on the refinish side of this industry, which included 15 years of being in a booth, some rougher than others, pulling the trigger, spending several semesters as a refinish instructor at a local community college, as well as over 30 years as a jobber, visiting hundreds of shops every year, seeing the issues firsthand, and watching some of the best and worst paint techs doing their thing. I've seen firsthand the frustration painters face when that job they worked so hard on got into the booth, but rushed the paint job a bit and now have to spend a ton of time trying to fine sand out the imperfections, hoping it'll rub out, only to ultimately resand and repaint a panel or two, or maybe the whole job. All while listening to the manager or owner bust his chops over the wasted paint materials and tying up the booth twice for the same job that was supposed to be delivered today, and now we'll have to put them in a rental. Oh yeah, usually one of the body techs will be laughing and giving them shit about it to boot. And we all know, as cruel as it sounds, sometimes that's the best part of a body man's day, is watching the painter screw something up and have to redo it, right? I've also seen the frustration from the ownership side of this issue as well. Owners or managers not understanding why their painter has to keep repainting vehicles due to dirt or a massive fisheye problem, but totally oblivious to the fact that they purposely postponed the filter changes or necessary booth or airline filter system or compressor maintenance needed to help keep these problems at bay because they considered the expenses unnecessary at the time. In fact, if I had $1 for every time I saw a dissect bead filter with a last change date older than a year, or an air compressor with at least a half gallon of water and oil that drained out, I could have retired a decade ago. Many times as a jobber, I'd get questioned on why a particular shop was spending so much on paint materials at certain times. And when I would ask if there was any redos in those time periods, usually the management had no idea until we just started doing some investigating and some digging. And almost 100% of the time, that's exactly what it was. Listen, I could go on and on and on about this, but the truth is, the problems and their causes are right under your nose. And the solutions are very easy. So let's get into this, shall we? So dirt is not magical. It doesn't just come from nowhere. The paint companies don't put it in their paint at the factory. I swear to God, I've had many painters and managers say that they actually think the dirt is already in the paint before they open the can. And for probably 90% of the time, it shows up in the paint job because of something that wasn't done correctly, a critical pre-prep step that was missed, or rushing a paint job, or just sheer laziness. Now granted, we don't live in a perfect world. The 100% nub-free paint job doesn't happen. Even the manufacturers can't get a perfect dirt-free finish with their multi-million-dollar automated spray booths in their highly controlled environments. In fact, the factory allows for a few specks of dirt per square foot of panel surface. So today's average downdraft booth may not be able to compete with that level of control, so the nub and rub process will never be totally eliminated, but the current level of flat panel sanding and rubbing, or worse yet, the sand and repaint process, could be drastically reduced to a minimal occurrence. If you're looking for a competitive edge for your business or a more effective jumpstart to your personal development in 2024, I'll make your first step super simple. It is a fact that an incredible number of the most successful business owners, nearly half of the Fortune 500 companies, top-earning professional athletes, entertainers, and industry leaders like Microsoft's Bill Gates, former President Bill Clinton, Richard Branson, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, and Salesforce Mark Benioff all have one thing in common. They all have at least one coach, and some have several, that they work with on a consistent basis. Someone that helps guide, mentor, and support them, challenge them, help them set and achieve goals that move them forward, and then hold them accountable to follow through, driving personal and professional growth. Working with a coach has many substantial benefits. Just for an example, 80% of coaching clients report improved self-esteem or self-confidence thanks to coaching. 99% of individuals and companies that hire a coach report being very satisfied, and 96% would do it again. If deep down, you know it's time to make those improvements in your business, your personal life that you've kicked down the road year after year, if you're tired of knowing there's a better version of you waiting to shine, but unsure of how to bring that version to light, if you're tired of wanting to enjoy a more successful business, but not sure how to start, and if you don't want to go another 12 months without better results, but you don't want to go it alone, then take the first step. It's super simple. Sometimes talking to the right person can make all the difference. Go to www.rickslover.com/contact and I'll set you up with a free consultation call with me to see if one-on-one coaching is right for you. Now, just as a reminder, dirt in the clear coat may have a chance of being removed with a nub and rub, or full panel sand process. But dirt in the base coat does not. That'll require a full sand and re-base coat, re-clear coat process. Fisheyes oftentimes will necessitate a repaint and continue to appear until that source is identified and corrected. Now, there are several places dirt comes from, many conditions that drive dirt into the booth atmosphere and onto the paint surface more than others, as well as several conditions that will result in an absolute nightmare of fisheyes in the paint job. But all of those things will boil down to 3 root sources for contamination. And as I mentioned earlier, surface contamination can be traced back to these 3 variables. It's either the vehicle, the booth, or the painter as the root source. The root source is where the contamination originated from, but the actual influencer, or person responsible for correcting or eliminating that contamination, could be the painter or even the shop owner. For example, floor filters plugged up with 2 months of overspray will kick dirt up into the booth atmosphere. It'd be classified as a booth as a root source, but the painter failing to A, change the floor filters when needed if that's the process at that shop, or B, letting the manager or owner know that it needs attention makes the painter an influencer, right? So let's look at those main root sources of contamination, shall we? Number 1, the booth. This is the magical machine where all your paint dreams come true. Come on, you've all seen the videos posted by these painters on TikTok or Instagram of these slick, flawless paintwork done. But it's sometimes also your greatest nightmares come to life, right? The booth is very simple in its purpose, but complex in its design. Basically, you have filtered, heated if it's downdraft, air comes into the booth, flows over the vehicle to draw away the overspray, and exhausts down through the floor filters, which catch the overspray particles before exiting out through the stacks on the top of the building. Now, most cross-draft booths bring in air from the inside of the shop. So whatever the ambient temperature is best, and sometimes it's colder. Brings it in through the front door filters, across the vehicle, and exhausts through the filter stacks on the opposite ends of the booth, and then exits out through the stacks on top of the building. So regardless of which type or brand of booth you have, it is the most crucial piece of equipment in your shop, usually the most expensive investment as well, and because nearly every single job has to pass through that booth before it gets delivered to the customer, and most importantly, ding, 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 you get paid for the job, I consider this piece of equipment the cash register of your business. Taking the utmost care of your cash register should be a no-brainer for any business owner, regardless of the industry you're in. If that cash register doesn't work correctly, or God forbid stops working, your income stream suffers or completely stops. Sound about right to you? I consider the air compressor, air lines to your booth, and any air filters or 3-stage filtration systems part of the root source of booth as well. Now, a large portion of the contamination issues fall into this root source. Issues caused by dirty filters, poor maintenance, airline contamination, and general care and cleaning of the booth ecosystem are often completely avoidable top culprits of the excessive wet or dry sanding and rubbing and the repaints. So here's the top culprits of contamination from the booth source. Number 1, dirty, overloaded exhaust filters and intake filters. Number 2, lack of booth maintenance and cleaning. That's like dirty, dusty floors, items stored inside the booth. Number 3, booth not balanced correctly. That makes a huge difference on whether you got a problem with dirt or not. Number 4, excessive water and oil in the air compressor due to poor maintenance. Number 5, contaminated air lines, unchanged air filters or 3-stage filtering systems. Number 6, desiccant bead breaking down or old air hoses breaking down. Number 7, vehicle not centered over grates. Number 8, booth doors left open without running in spray mode. That lets the shop dirt in, just so you know. Now, there are several other factors that contribute to this, but these are the most common problems we found. Now, let's take a look at what most think would be the biggest problematic root source, the vehicle. This is one variable that would seem to bring the biggest potential for issues. I mean, the booth and the painter don't change on every job, but the vehicle does, right? The amount of dirt the car brings into the shop, the possibility of silicone-based products on or in the car, The size of each job and how they, along with the parts painted off the vehicle, are positioned in the booth can be challenging and may create other opportunities to attract dirt. But according to my surveys, not so much. So let's take a look. The top culprits of contamination from the vehicle are: number 1, vehicle not completely washed and dried before entering the production floor. That means power washing out the wheel wells, all the cracks, the underside of it, the engine compartment, really cleaning it before you drag that thing into your shop to start on it. Number 2, vehicle not being completely washed and dried before final masking. If it's a big hit job and you've got mechanical stuff on there and you've replaced some suspension parts and, there's a lot of greasy, dirty hands that get all over that car. Your whole process of doing body work and paint prep work gets a lot of dirt and contaminations all over the vehicle. Thoroughly washing it and drying it before your final masking starts is something that should not be avoided. Number 3, proper wax and grease. And that's both solvent and water-based cleaners not being used. Number 4, silicone-based, like Armor All, products used on the outside or inside of the car. And number 5, ceramic coatings on vehicle surface not properly removed before painting. That's relatively new. Obviously, the ceramic coatings have only been around a few years, but that does play a big part. Now, realistically, there's only a couple ways vehicles add to the contamination issue. Being proactive on thorough cleaning of vehicle before bringing it into the shop and using the proper surface cleaners, like both solvent wax and grease removers and waterborne cleaners, can eliminate most of those concerns. Now, I know this may sound ridiculous, but it helps if you think of it this way. Treat that new repair job that's caked with mud or a nice snow, salt, slush mix sitting outside you're about to bring into your shop. Treat it like a visitor standing at the front door of your home with his wet, muddy boots, oil and grease all over his pants, and a nice layer of sawdust on his shirt. Do you really want to swing open that door? Just let him come on in, bring that world of dirt and contamination into your clean home, walk across your carpet, maybe sit on your new off-white sofa? Probably not. Hopefully, silly as it seems, hopefully that visual helps. Okay, last but certainly not least, let's dive into what issues the painter brings to this party, okay? Although all forms of surface contamination fall into those 3 root sources, the paint tech really has the most influence over the actions taken or not taken to avoid the possibilities of these affecting the end results of his paint finishes. The ability to obtain a very clean job is well within the grasp of the painter, provided the management does their part to maintain the equipment properly, but also can squander that ability if they choose to be lazy or have no pride in their craft. And unfortunately, I've seen both of those many times in my career. I've also seen the opposite of that. I've seen painters that are just on it every day, striving for perfection. It's a tremendous amount of responsibility, no doubt, and so many variables to contend with within the painter's quest to have a nearly perfect finish. Yes, the management and ownership makes financial decisions to have filters changed and regular maintenance done within your booth environment or not, but the painter can only try to plead his case and influence that decision. That is the truth. But the painter can make the most of his choices to keep his kingdom as clean as possible. That includes the vehicle, the booth's interior, as well as the outside area surrounding the booth, and his or her own personal hygiene practices. So here we go. Here's the top culprits of contamination from the painter. Number 1, not wearing proper PPE. That's paint suit or a paint jacket at minimum. A head covering, gloves, fresh air respirator. Number 2, poor spray gun maintenance. If you're not cleaning your guns out every couple jobs, you end up bringing a dirty gun into that atmosphere. You'll end up with some spitting, some chunks of the clear coming through the base gun, or vice versa if you don't change guns out. You get leaking. You get all kinds of issues coming out of that spray gun that are totally avoidable. Number 3, using poor quality wipes or old dirty tack rags, or the wrong tack rag for the paint type. They make a lot of new tack rags for, waterborne base coat, clear coat jobs. Have a lot less tack on them than the old crystal tack rags. And even with the crystal tack rags, they're still good on most solvent jobs, but if you just pull them out of the pack, flip them over once and start using them, and if you rub too hard, a lot of that resin that's on those tack rags will transfer right onto your job and it'll look like dirt or fisheyes. So make sure you open that thing up completely, let it air out for a few minutes, lightly fold it back in half or maybe in quarters, and then you can use it. Number 4, dirty or broken down air hoses. I see those all the time. And, it's an expense to replace an air hose, but I think it's a little bit bigger expense if you have to repaint a job because chunks of that old air hose blew through and came out in the job. Number 5, sanding in the booth. I see a ton of this out there. People nubbing and, getting ready to rub. They'll pull it outside to rub, but they do all the sanding inside. Or they do final sanding, blow it off, and start taping while it's in the booth. Man, that's wrong. You can't do that. There should be zero sanding in the booth, period. Number 6, improper prep of surface and vehicle. Number 7, improper masking and taping. Simple as that sounds, all it takes is a poorly masked or poorly taped down piece of plastic, and now you got some issues. Number 8, not using an anti-stat process. Not everybody's hip to using anti-stat gun or even anything that's anti-stat because they don't believe in it. But I'm telling you, I've seen it firsthand. It does work, and it works very well. And if I had to go back to painting tomorrow, the first thing I'd buy is an anti-stat gun. Number 9, parts painted on dirty parts racks. I see this all the time, too. You got these, parts racks that got 3 years of crustaceans built up on them, and nobody does anything. Sometimes they'll put a piece of plastic over them. Sometimes they'll wrap a piece of paper over them. But, man, get those dirty parts racks out of the booth. Number 10, working on other jobs in between coats. I'll see this in a production shop that just has one painter, no helper. Gets a coat of base on, goes out, does a little sanding on a car, comes back in, puts another coat on. He's bringing all that dirt in with him every single time. And number 11, too much junk stored in the booth. That's like cans of paint, plastic dispenser, tools, stands not being used, all kinds of stuff I see in the paint booth. There should be nothing in there but exactly what you need to spray that one particular job, and that's it. Now, this list can go much longer, but you get the idea, right? There's a lot that the painter can control to minimize the amount of potential dirt, dust, or fisheyes that end up in his or her paintwork, and that'll cost the shop as well as themselves unnecessarily. Listen, I'm not shooting from the hip here. I'm talking from experience. I was there before. I repainted a lot of jobs because when I was young, I was lazy. I was in a hurry, or I just didn't understand a lot of what I'm explaining here today. And there may be many of you out there that are in that same boat. Listen, don't feel bad about it, but just take what I'm saying, learn from it, and make some changes that'll help you. I didn't realize all those factors that were really my responsibility to control. But eventually, I did. The old mindset, if not my shop, not my problem, or that's not my job to clean out the booth, just doesn't fly anymore. Because ultimately, yeah, maybe the owner suffers because it's going to cost him more in utilities and paint and lost production. But as a painter, it's costing you too. Because I'm pretty sure you only get paid to paint a car the first time. Anything after that is no charge. And it's also keeping you from painting something else. So if you're a professional paint tech and plan on making a great living and being a valuable part of a good shop, take care of your cash register at all costs. And if you're a collision shop owner, protect your most valuable investments, your people and your equipment, by engaging in a preventative maintenance program for your booth. Now that's it for this segment. Next time we're going to dig into the costs of redos. Hey, real quick, there's one more thing I wanted to share with you. If you're looking for a really good video that shows you from start to finish how to get a car properly prepped, get your booth ready, and successfully spray a job with very minimal dust, dirt, or any paint surface issues, I'll invite you to check out this video done by Gary Sobry, an instructor at Washtenaw Community College in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Gary was the guy that gave me my shot at being a refinish instructor there for several semesters. Anyways, Gary has started a podcast himself called Refinish Media, and he's been posting some fantastic videos and some how-tos and done some interviews with some really good guests. So I want you to check out this video. It's about 28 minutes long, but it's really probably one of the most comprehensive guides to really getting a job from start to finish through the booth with fantastic results. So I'll put the link in the show notes. Go check it out. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this first episode in my Keeping It Clean series. Be sure to tune in to the next segment of this series where we dive deep into the actual costs of redoing paintwork. Well, that's all I had for you today. Thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate your support, and I hope you have a great week. I can always be reached at www.ricksillover.com, where you can find all my social media links, podcast episodes, blog posts, and much more.